Arya stood at the edge of the observation deck staring at the endless swirl of stars. The Helian Empire's palace loomed before her in the distance, a colossal structure of silver and glass that reflected the light of a nearby nebula. She gritted her teeth and crossed her arms, refusing to let herself feel awe. She was supposed to be impressed. Everyone said the palace was magnificent, a marvel of alien engineering. But Arya only felt trapped. Her engagement to Prince Kael was not her choice, it was a political arrangement, a human concession to secure peace between Earth and the Helian Empire. Arya hated it. The thought of marrying someone she barely knew, someone whose culture and species were completely foreign, made her stomach twist. She had trained for diplomacy all her life, had learned dozens of alien languages, studied countless alien customs. Yet now she felt helpless. She was a human ambassador, yes, but here in the Helian court, she was just a pawn. The shuttle doors hissed open behind her and 2 palace attendants glided forward, their limbs slender, their skin a pale iridescent blue. Their eyes, large and almond-shaped, seemed to shine with curiosity. "Welcome, Ambassador Arya," one of them said, voice musical but firm. "The palace awaits your arrival." Arya nodded stiffly, forcing a polite smile. She followed them through the shuttle bay and into the palace proper. The halls were taller than any human building she had ever seen, and the ceilings shimmered like liquid crystal. Statues of Helian heroes lined the corridors, each one larger than life, their expressions proud and distant. As she walked, Arya felt eyes on her. She turned subtly and froze. Across the hall, standing on a raised balcony, was a figure that made her pause. A woman, not much older than Arya herself, tall, regal, with hair like spun silver and eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. The woman's expression was calm but piercing, like she was looking straight into Arya's mind. Arya felt a strange pull in her chest. She didn't understand it. This was an alien princess if the palace attendants were correct. And yet the way the woman looked at her made her feel both small and seen at the same time. The attendant spoke again, and Arya forced herself to move forward, ignoring the princess's gaze. She had work to do. She had a role to play. "Ambassador, you will be taken to your quarters to rest before the welcome ceremony," one attendant said. "Prince Kael will meet you shortly." Quarters, rest, ceremonies, all words that felt like chains. But Arya nodded and followed them anyway. Her room was large and minimalist, decorated with flowing fabrics in shades of silver and violet. The view from the window stretched into the nebula, the colors swirling like oil on water. Arya wanted to think it was beautiful. She wanted to feel awe, but all she felt was a tightening in her chest. She was alone for a moment and the silence pressed in. Then she heard a soft knock at the door. "Enter," she called, though her voice lacked confidence. The door slid open, and the same attendant from before stepped in, holding a small device. "This is a message from the Palace Council. They request your presence at dinner tonight with Prince Kael and Princess Lyra." Arya froze again. She had expected Prince Kael, of course, but Princess Lyra's name made her pulse quicken. That was the woman she had seen on the balcony. The woman who had looked at her as if she could see everything inside her. "Yes," Arya said, trying to sound composed. "I will be there." The attendant nodded and left, leaving her alone once more. Arya sat on the edge of the bed and let out a long breath. She was a human in a palace of aliens, expected to charm, negotiate, and obey. And yet, something about that princess made her uneasy. It was not fear. Not exactly. It was curiosity, intrigue. The hours passed slowly. Arya tried to prepare herself for the ceremony, reviewing the rules of etiquette she had memorized. She practiced bowing, measured her words, rehearsed her polite smiles. And yet, in the back of her mind, she kept thinking of Lyra. When the time finally came, she walked into the grand dining hall with her head held high, determined to show that humans were not weak or easily intimidated. The hall was vast, its ceilings arching high above like the inside of a cathedral. Tables stretched in long lines and dozens of alien nobles watched her arrival, their expressions curious, cautious, and in some cases, dismissive. At the center of the hall stood Prince Kael, tall and handsome in the alien style, his expression polite but unreadable, and beside him unmistakably was Princess Lyra. Lyra's gaze found her almost immediately. It was not a fleeting glance. It lingered, thoughtful, analyzing. Arya felt heat rise to her cheeks but forced herself to stand tall. The ceremony began with formal greetings and speeches. Arya listened politely, answering questions with carefully measured words. She caught fragments of whispers among the nobles, comments about the human ambassador, speculation about the political outcome of the marriage. Arya ignored them, focusing instead on Lyra's presence. After a long moment, Lyra approached. Her steps were light, almost floating across the floor. When she reached Arya, she bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. Arya bowed in return, though her heart raced. "You are not what I expected," Lyra said softly, her voice melodic but carrying an edge of authority. "Tell me, Ambassador, do humans always surprise so easily?" Arya blinked. "I don't know what you mean," she said cautiously. Lyra smiled faintly, not unkindly. "Perhaps that is why I am interested. So many humans think themselves fragile, but you do not seem afraid of the palace or its people." Arya felt a flush of pride, quickly tempered by caution. Flattery from a powerful alien princess could be dangerous. Yet there was something genuine in Lyra's eyes, something that made her feel seen, not as a pawn or a political tool, but as a person. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted at the far end of the hall. A group of masked figures burst in, brandishing strange weapons. The nobles gasped, some ducking behind tables while others drew their own defense devices. Arya's training kicked in immediately. She ducked low, grabbing a serving tray to shield herself and moving toward a vulnerable noble to pull them to safety. Lyra moved with uncanny grace, her movements precise, striking with minimal effort to disarm the attackers. Her eyes found Arya's, and for a moment the chaos seemed to shrink around them. They were alone together, yet connected in purpose. The attack was brief but intense. By the time palace security arrived, the intruders were subdued. The hall was in disarray, but no one was seriously harmed. Arya's heart pounded. Her hand shook slightly, but she felt a spark of something she had not expected. Exhilaration. Lyra approached her once more, her expression unreadable. "You are brave," she said simply. "And clever." Arya met her gaze. "I do what I must," she said. And she meant it. Lyra nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Good. You will need both here." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of cautious conversation and formal politeness. Yet when Arya finally returned to her quarters, she could not stop thinking about Lyra. There was a challenge in her eyes, a question unspoken. And somewhere deep inside, Arya felt a spark of curiosity, and perhaps even admiration, for the alien princess who had noticed her in a way no one else had. She sat by the window, staring out at the swirling nebula, and allowed herself a small, reluctant smile. The palace was vast, the politics dangerous, and her position precarious. And yet, for the first time, she felt a glimmer of possibility. Perhaps this marriage would not be the prison she feared. Perhaps with the right alliances, with courage and wit, she could find her own path even here among the stars. The morning light filtered through the high crystalline windows of the Helian palace, casting iridescent patterns across Arya's quarters. The view of the nebula stretched endlessly, but Arya barely noticed it. She was thinking of the night before, the attack, the chaos, and the alien princess, Lyra. Lyra's gaze haunted her. Calm, powerful, and yet curious. Not many had ever looked at Arya that way. Most humans on Earth, or in the wider galaxy, had either dismissed her as small or underestimated her intelligence. But Lyra had seen something else. Something human. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Enter," Arya said. The attendant from the previous day stepped in. "Ambassador, Princess Lyra requests your presence in the council chambers. There are matters to discuss regarding the peace treaty and security protocols after last night's attack." Arya froze. Lyra wanted to meet her, alone, without the court or Prince Kale present. Her stomach twisted. Was this a trap? Or an opportunity? Arya squared her shoulders. Either way, she would not show fear. She followed the attendant through the palace, walking past towering statues and shimmering tapestries that depicted Helian victories. Every step reminded her of her place, a human among aliens, a representative of her species, fragile yet defiant. The council chambers were vast, circular, and filled with holographic displays of star systems, treaties, and diplomatic routes. At the far end, Lyra stood alone, studying the projections. She turned as Arya entered. "Good morning, Ambassador," Lyra said, her voice calm, smooth and almost musical. You have rested? I have, Arya replied, keeping her tone neutral. Thank you. Lyra's eyes softened slightly, but there was still a piercing intensity. Good, you will need your strength. The attack yesterday was not random. Someone within the palace planned it, and I suspect it was meant to test you. Arya tilted her head. Test me. Lyra approached, her steps quiet, deliberate. Yes, to see if humans are capable of thinking, acting, and surviving in a situation we cannot fully control. You passed? Arya blinked, unsure how to respond. Passed? She repeated. You mean, like a test? Lyra gave a faint smile. Not exactly a test. More like observation. You acted with courage, intelligence, and adaptability. Most humans would have frozen. Most aliens would have relied solely on their own guards. You acted. Arya's chest swelled with pride, but she forced herself to stay composed. I do what is necessary, she said, meeting Lyra's gaze steadily. Lyra studied her silently for a moment. Then she said, Perhaps there is more to humans than I expected. Perhaps there is more to you than I expected. Arya felt heat rise to her cheeks. There was a subtle edge to Lyra's words, a challenge, an invitation. She wanted to respond, to ask what Lyra meant, but the princess turned her attention to the holographic displays. The palace council is divided, Lyra said, pointing to several points on the display. Some factions want the peace treaty to succeed. Others want it to fail, and some, well, they are opportunists. They see your engagement as a weak point. Arya leaned closer, studying the holograms. They want to use me? Lyra nodded. Yes, but not all of them. Some see the value of humans. Some do not. You must learn to distinguish them, Ambassador. That skill will save your life and the lives of others. Arya felt a thrill of determination. Here she was, a human in a palace of aliens, being told she mattered, that she had the power to influence events. Most humans would have felt small, powerless. But Arya had never been like most humans. I understand, she said. I will be careful. Lyra tilted her head, considering her. Good, I hope you are. Because the next days will not be easy. The first meeting of the day was formal. Arya and Lyra entered the council chamber together, this time joined by Prince Kael and several senior Helian diplomats. The air was tense, thick with suspicion and barely hidden hostility. The council debated the security protocols for the human delegation. Many spoke with subtle derision, questioning whether humans were reliable allies. Arya listened, taking careful notes but refusing to be intimidated. She had faced prejudice before, but now she had Lyra's quiet support. At one point, a senior council member sneered, Ambassador Arya, surely you do not believe your species can understand Helian politics well enough to contribute. Arya met his gaze calmly. With respect, I have studied your laws, your treaties, and your history. I have learned your languages and observed your customs. I may be human, but I am not inexperienced. The room fell silent. The council member scowled, clearly displeased. But Lyra's eyes softened in approval. Later, Arya was led to the palace gardens, a vast expanse of alien flora that shimmered with colors unseen on Earth. Lyra followed, keeping her distance but close enough to observe. You do not seem afraid here, Lyra said, breaking the silence. Many humans would be overwhelmed by the palace, the politics, the aliens, Arya shrugged. Fear is useless. It does not solve problems. You learn quickly or you fail. Lyra smiled faintly. Good answer. Few humans think this way. They walked among the strange flowers and glowing trees, the silence between them comfortable, charged with unspoken curiosity. Arya noticed how Lyra's movements were precise, controlled, almost like a dancer, but not artificial. Every step, every gesture was deliberate, yet natural. Tell me, Lyra said finally, why did you volunteer for this position? To be an ambassador, to marry a prince, to represent a species that the galaxy often underestimates? Arya paused. She had never shared this with anyone. Because humans are underestimated. Always underestimated. And I want to prove that we are capable, that we are strong, that we can survive and even thrive where others doubt us. Lyra regarded her silently for a moment, then nodded. I see. Then perhaps you are not like the others. Perhaps you are different. The words stirred something in Arya. Different, not weak, not fragile. She felt a surge of confidence. Before she could respond, a warning alarm echoed through the garden. Red lights flashed. Security drone's word to life. Another attack? Arya asked, instinctively ducking behind a tree. Lyra's expression was calm, almost amused. Possibly, or a test. Either way, stay close. They moved together, weaving through the garden with surprising efficiency. Arya noticed how Lyra seemed to anticipate every move, every threat. They reached the source of the alarm, a small group of masked figures attempting to bypass the palace security. Arya's heart raced, but her mind was sharp. She signaled to Lyra and took cover behind a glowing tree. Using her knowledge of alien weapons and her quick reflexes, she disabled one of the intruders with a well-thrown device she grabbed from a nearby security station. Lyra moved with lethal precision, disarming the others. Together, they neutralized the threat before any harm came to the palace or the diplomats. Breathing heavily, Arya glanced at Lyra. "You make it look easy." Lyra gave a faint smile. "Experience, observation, and perhaps trust in a human's ingenuity." Arya felt her chest tighten. Trust. The word echoed in her mind. Not many aliens trusted humans. Most saw them as weak or unpredictable. But Lyra had trusted her. And in that trust, Arya felt something new. Possibility. By the end of the day, Arya had not only survived another attempt on her life, but she had begun to earn a place of respect in the Helian court. The nobles were cautious, but the whispers had changed. Humans, it seemed, were not as fragile as they believed. Lyra approached her one last time before the evening ended. "You surprised me today, Ambassador. Few humans can think, act, and adapt under pressure. Even fewer with grace." Arya managed a small smile. "I do what I must." Lyra's eyes softened almost warmly. "Good. You will need that strength. And your mind. And perhaps your courage." Arya nodded, understanding the unspoken challenge. She was far from safe. The palace, the council, and the galaxy itself were full of threats. But she was human, and humans thrived where others doubted them. As she lay in her quarters that night staring at the nebula again, she felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The palace was vast, the politics complex, and the danger real. And yet for the first time she felt alive. Lyra had laid eyes on her and seen more than a pawn, more than a diplomat. She had seen a human capable of brilliance, courage, and ingenuity. The morning sun, or what passed for sunlight through the palace's transparent dome, cast long, colored shadows across the Helian gardens. Arya moved carefully along the winding paths, her senses alert. The attack in the gardens yesterday had confirmed what she already suspected. The palace was full of enemies, both obvious and hidden. She had been trained for diplomacy, for negotiation, for navigating human politics. But this was something different. This was a game of shadows and subtle moves, where one wrong step could cost not only her life, but the fragile peace between Earth and the Helian Empire. Arya had learned quickly that the Helian court was filled with whispers, alliances, and betrayals. Many nobles were wary of humans, and some outright wanted to see her fail. But one presence in the palace gave her confidence. Lyra. Princess Lyra had requested a private meeting, and when Arya arrived, she found the alien princess studying a holographic map of the palace, her fingers tracing invisible lines in the air. "You are early," Lyra said, without looking up. "I prefer being prepared," Arya replied, her voice steady. "What are we looking at?" Lyra finally turned, her glowing eyes meeting Arya's. "Security vulnerabilities. Yesterday's attack was not random. Someone has knowledge of the palace layout, the schedules of guards, even the response protocols. That knowledge is dangerous in the wrong hands." Arya nodded. "So you want me to help you find the source?" Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "Yes, and you are capable. Humans think fast. They improvise when others freeze." "I've seen it." Arya felt a spark of pride. No one in the Helian Council had ever trusted her like this. "Then where do we start?" Lyra gestured toward the hologram. "We begin here. Yesterday's intruders entered through this sector. I want you to accompany me. We move quietly, observe, and gather information." They left the room, moving through hidden corridors, bypassing grand halls filled with nobles and diplomats. Arya was struck again by Lyra's agility, her calm focus, and her knowledge of the palace. Even the shadows seemed to obey her. As they reached the target area, Arya whispered, "Do you think they will try again today?" Lyra's eyes narrowed. "They may. Or they may be watching us, seeing if we notice. Either way, stay alert. Minutes passed in tense silence. Arya's mind raced, analyzing every sound, every movement. Then a faint vibration reached her ears, a security drone moving unusually slowly. Lyra froze, signaling Arya to hide behind a pillar. They watched as the drone scanned the corridor and then paused, facing the opposite direction. "They're watching patterns," Lyra said softly. "They want to know how we respond." "We have to disrupt that," Arya thought quickly. Using a small device she carried for emergencies, she projected a holographic decoy down the corridor. The drone reacted immediately, moving toward the false target. Arya suppressed a smile. Humans had always been resourceful, and this small trick had worked perfectly. Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Impressive," Arya shrugged. "Experience." Later that evening, the palace held a formal reception. Nobles and diplomats gathered in the grand hall, dressed in elaborate robes and ceremonial attire. The air was thick with tension and whispered alliances. Arya moved through the crowd, observing carefully, noting subtle gestures, overhearing fragments of conversation. Lyra stayed close, her presence both reassuring and intimidating. Together, they scanned the room, identifying potential threats and allies alike. A group of nobles whispered behind Arya, clearly speaking about her. She could hear the words, fragile human, weak diplomat, pawn of earth. Arya ignored them, focusing instead on Lyra, who gave a subtle nod. That small gesture reminded her that she was not alone. She had an ally, one who respected her, one who understood her value. Suddenly, a disturbance erupted at the far end of the hall. A noble, clearly upset, slammed a goblet onto the floor, sending a ripple of surprise through the crowd. Arya immediately recognized the signs, an attempt to create chaos, a distraction for something more sinister. "Follow me," Lyra whispered. They moved quickly, slipping past startled guests, toward the source of the disruption. In a small alcove, they found a masked figure attempting to tamper with the security systems. Arya's heart raced, but she acted without hesitation. Using her human intuition and quick thinking, she disabled the intruder with a precise throw of a small device she had hidden in her sleeve. Lyra moved seamlessly beside her, disarming another intruder. Together, they neutralized the threat before anyone else noticed. The masked figures were skilled, but they had underestimated humans' unpredictability and Lyra's expertise. Breathing heavily, Arya looked at Lyra. "They were prepared, but we were faster." Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "Yes, humans have a remarkable ability to adapt under pressure. I underestimated it before. I will not again." The rest of the evening passed without further incident, but the incident had made a mark. Some nobles had noticed the quiet efficiency with which Arya and Lyra had dealt with the intruders. Whispers began to circulate. Humans might not be as weak as previously believed. Over the next few days, Arya and Lyra continued their secret investigations. They moved through the palace under the cover of night, examining corridors, observing guards, and decoding messages. Arya was amazed at how much information Lyra had at her disposal, and how quickly she could process it. But Lyra was equally impressed by Arya's ingenuity, her ability to improvise, to think on her feet, to see patterns others overlooked. One night, as they reviewed their findings in a quiet chamber, Lyra spoke softly. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met. You do not accept limitations. You do not fear challenges, humans. Maybe more dangerous than I imagined." Arya felt a shiver run down her spine. Dangerous, perhaps. She had always been underestimated, always told her species was fragile, weak. But now in Lyra's eyes she saw acknowledgement, respect, and maybe even admiration. "You are not so different," Arya said quietly. "You see the same things I do, just through a different lens." Lyra considered this, her eyes thoughtful. "Perhaps. But it is rare for someone outside the Helian court to see clearly. Most are blinded by tradition, fear, or pride. You are not." A small smile touched Arya's lips. "I've had practice. Humans survive because we learn quickly. We adapt. We fight when necessary." Lyra's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "And you fight not just for yourself, but for others. That is admirable." Arya felt warmth in her chest. She had always wanted respect, acknowledgement, but never expected it from an alien princess. And yet here it was, offered freely, without manipulation or politics. As the days passed, Arya's presence in the palace began to shift. She was no longer just a guest or a political pawn. Nobles and diplomats started to treat her differently, noticing her intelligence, her courage, and her quick thinking. The whispers changed from mockery to cautious respect. Lyra remained at her side, a constant ally and observer. Together they uncovered evidence of a larger plot within the palace, one that aimed to destabilize the peace treaty between Earth and the Hellion Empire. Certain factions sought to manipulate the human-alien marriage for their gain, using fear and prejudice as tools. Arya's mind raced. The stakes were higher than she had imagined. Failure could mean not only her life but the collapse of interstellar peace. Yet with Lyra's guidance and her own human resourcefulness, she felt capable of facing whatever came next. One evening, Lyra pulled Arya aside in the gardens, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of alien flora. "Tomorrow we confront them," Lyra said. "We will expose the conspirators before they can act. Are you ready?" Arya's heart pounded. She had faced threats before, but this would be different. Political intrigue, palace conspiracies, and potentially lethal adversaries. Yet she nodded, determination hardening in her chest. "I am ready." Lyra's eyes softened almost warmly. "Good. You have grown stronger in just a few days. Humans are..." "Remarkable." Arya allowed herself a small smile. "We survive, we adapt. We thrive." Lyra tilted her head, a faint smile touching her lips. "Indeed, and perhaps you will teach us that as well." For the first time, Arya felt that she was not just surviving in an alien court. She was shaping the future not just for herself, but for humans and aliens alike. And with Lyra as her ally, she was ready to face the shadows of the palace and uncover the truth that could change the galaxy. The morning sun, filtered through the Helion Palace's translucent dome, cast sparkling light across the grand hallways. Arya moved swiftly, her mind focused. Today would decide everything. The conspirators she and Lyra had uncovered were planning to act during the official wedding ceremony. Display meant to cement peace between Earth and the Helion Empire. But Arya refused to be a pawn. Lyra met her in the council chamber, her presence calm, commanding, and reassuring. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her glowing eyes fixed on Arya. Arya nodded. "I am. Let's end this." They had spent days gathering evidence, intercepted messages, covertly placed security recordings, and subtle behavioral patterns of nobles who hid ambition beneath polite smiles. Each piece revealed a dangerous plot. Some wanted to assassinate key diplomats during the ceremony to destabilize the alliance. Others aimed to frame the humans for failure, undermining Earth's position in interstellar politics. Lyra reviewed the holograms one last time. "The attack will come during the opening procession. They expect chaos, but they will not expect us working together." Arya took a deep breath. Humans were adaptable. They thrived where others hesitated. And humans could think creatively, see solutions no one else imagined. She was about to prove that. The wedding ceremony began in the grand hall. Nobles, diplomats, and dignitaries filled the towering space, dressed in flowing robes of brilliant colors. The air was thick with anticipation, whispers of excitement and speculation mixing with tension. Prince Kael stood at the center, regal and composed. Arya walked beside him, her posture straight, her eyes scanning the crowd. And beside them, quietly observing, was Lyra. The princess's calm demeanor gave Arya confidence. She was not alone. As the ceremony proceeded, Arya noticed subtle signs: a noble slightly out of place, a shadow that lingered too long, a hand near a concealed device. Her instincts told her something was coming. Lyra leaned close. "They are ready. Be alert." Arya's fingers twitched. Humans thrived under pressure. She could handle this the moment arrived. A loud crash echoed through the hall. Several masked figures surged forward, wielding strange weapons designed to incapacitate, not kill. Panic spread among the guests. Some nobles screamed, others ducked behind pillars. Arya acted immediately. She grabbed a ceremonial shield from one of the guards and moved toward the nearest threat. Her human reflexes were fast, precise, unpredictable. One attacker lunged at her with a weapon, but Arya sidestepped, using his own momentum to knock him into a display. Lyra moved beside her, her movements fluid and precise. She disarmed two attackers with minimal effort, her glowing eyes scanning the room for threats. Together they formed an unstoppable team. Arya's ingenuity and speed combined with Lyra's skill and strategy. "Here," Lyra called, pointing to a group attempting to breach the security gate. Arya nodded. Using a hidden device she had prepared, she projected holographic duplicates of the guests, confusing the attackers. They stumbled, unsure who to target. Arya used the opportunity to disable one attacker with a precise throw of a small metal cylinder, knocking him unconscious. Lyra's voice was calm, commanding. "Focus on the leaders. We must end this quickly." Arya moved, her movements deliberate, attacking with human precision and unpredictability. Each step, each action showed the ingenuity of her species. Humans had survived against overwhelming odds on Earth, against predators, disasters, and each other. Here, among aliens, she proved the same truth. Humans were clever, resourceful, and fearless when necessary. The attackers faltered. Panic spread through them as Lyra and Arya anticipated every move, every strike. The nobles watched in awe. The humans, Arya, was not helpless. She was brilliant. Within minutes, the masked attackers were subdued. The palace security arrived to detain the intruders. The hall fell silent, broken only by heavy breaths and whispered awe. Lyra turned to Arya, her glowing eyes meeting the humans. "Impressive," she said softly. "You adapted quickly. You saw what others could not. You saved many lives today." Arya's chest rose and fell rapidly. "We worked together," she said. "I couldn't have done it alone." Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "Indeed, and you should remember this. Humans are underestimated often, but you prove otherwise." Arya felt warmth in her chest. Recognition. Respect. Something she had rarely received, and even more rarely from an alien of such power. Prince Kael approached, his expression a mixture of relief and admiration. "Ambassador Arya," he said, "your actions, they were remarkable. You saved many, including members of our council." Arya inclined her head politely. "I did what was necessary, Your Highness." But the whispers in the hall were unmistakable. The humans, especially this ambassador, were no longer seen as fragile or weak. Humans were clever, brave, and capable of extraordinary things. After the ceremony, Lyra led Arya to a quieter chamber. "You have proven much today," she said, "but there is more to this palace than what you see. Others will test you, challenge you, and doubt you. You must continue to be alert, and you must trust your instincts." Arya nodded. "I understand. And I trust you, Lyra." Lyra's gaze softened. "Good. Because you will need an ally in this court, someone who understands both human and Helian perspectives, and I will be that ally." Arya felt a strange mix of pride and relief, trust, recognition, partnership. These were rare gifts in a court full of manipulation and hidden agendas. She realized that she was no longer just a pawn. She was shaping events, influencing outcomes, and showing the Helian Empire that humans were a force to be reckoned with. For the first time, Arya felt a real connection, not just to Lyra, but to the broader purpose she represented. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy, but she had proven that a single human, equipped with courage, intelligence, and ingenuity, could change the course of history. Over the next days, Arya and Lyra worked closely. They navigated the delicate politics of the Helian court, exposing hidden plots and subtly shifting opinions in favor of peace. Arya's cleverness and human intuition complemented Lyra's knowledge and influence. Together, they became an unstoppable force, an unusual partnership, bridging species, culture, and centuries of prejudice. Arya discovered that humans had much to teach aliens about adaptability, improvisation, and courage. Lyra, in turn, showed Arya the strength of strategic thinking, the power of calm authority, and the value of observing before acting. They learned from each other, respected each other, and began to rely on each other not just for survival but for influence. One evening, as the palace gardens glowed softly under the alien moons, Lyra spoke quietly. "The court will respect you now, Arya, but respect can be fleeting. Some will continue to doubt humans, to plot against you, to test you. Are you prepared?" Arya smiled faintly, her eyes bright. "I am human. We survive, we adapt, we overcome. And now I have an ally." Lyra's lips curved in approval. "Then perhaps together we can change more than the court. Perhaps we can change the galaxy." Arya felt a thrill. The palace no longer seemed like a prison. It was a challenge, a battlefield of wit and strategy, and she was ready. not as a pawn but as a human capable of remarkable things. The partnership between human and alien princess was unexpected, unlikely, and perhaps dangerous. But it was also powerful, and in the quiet of the alien night, Arya realized that this alliance forged in trust and mutual respect would shape the future. She had entered the Helian court reluctant, wary, and fearful. Now she stood as a beacon of human strength, ingenuity, and courage. And beside her, Lyra, the alien princess who had first laid eyes on her, stood not just as an observer, but as an ally, mentor, and friend. The palace, the court, and the galaxy itself would never underestimate humans again. The palace was quiet in the early morning, its vast halls empty except for Arya and Lyra as they walked side by side. The events of the wedding ceremony still echoed in their minds, the chaos, the danger, the thrill of turning what should have been disaster into a triumph. Humans and aliens alike had seen what a human ambassador could do, and the palace would never be the same. Arya felt a sense of calm and determination she had never known. She had entered the Helian court reluctantly, expecting to be a pawn in a political game. She had expected to be underestimated, dismissed, perhaps even ignored. But now, she stood not only as a representative of Earth but as a respected figure in the Helian Empire, a symbol that humans were clever, brave, and capable. Lyra walked silently beside her, eyes scanning the empty halls with habitual caution. "The court will talk about you for months," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "Some will admire you. Some will resent you. But none will doubt humans again." Arya smiled faintly. "I never wanted admiration, just a chance to show what humans can do, and to survive." Lyra's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "Then you have succeeded. More than you realize. The peace treaty is secure and the conspirators have been exposed. Your actions, your courage, have changed the course of history." Arya felt a swell of pride. It was a rare feeling and she savored it. "It wasn't just me," she said. "It was you too, Lyra. We worked together." Lyra's gaze softened. "Yes, together. And that is how change is made. Not alone, collaboration, trust, and sometimes courage." In the following weeks, Arya's presence in the court became increasingly significant. Diplomats who had once dismissed humans approached her for advice, strategy, and insight. Nobles who had plotted against the peace treaty were quietly sidelined, their influence diminished. Humans, for the first time in the history of the Helian Empire, were seen as equals in interstellar politics. Arya navigated this new landscape with care. She knew that trust could be fragile and power could be dangerous, but she also knew that humans had qualities the galaxy often overlooked: ingenuity, adaptability, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Lyra remained by her side, not as a guardian or superior, but as an ally and friend. Together they strategized, guided diplomatic efforts, and prepared for the challenges the galaxy would inevitably throw at them. One day, in a private chamber, Lyra spoke quietly, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the alien sun. "Arya, you have done something remarkable. You have shown the Helian Empire, and perhaps the galaxy, that humans are more than they appear. But more importantly, you have shown me that trust and friendship can cross species, cultures, and centuries of prejudice." Arya felt a warmth in her chest. "And you have shown me that strength is not just physical. Strategy, patience, observation. You've taught me much, Lyra." Lyra smiled, a rare, genuine expression. "And there is still more to learn. The galaxy is vast, Ambassador, and dangerous. But together, perhaps we can make it a little safer." Months passed and the political landscape shifted. Earth's representatives gained newfound respect. The Helian court became more open to collaboration, and humans were no longer dismissed as fragile or weak. Arya's actions had become a symbol of human ingenuity and bravery. The peace treaty, once fragile and uncertain, now held firmly. Arya's name was whispered with admiration in the corridors of power, and even those who had doubted humans began to acknowledge their strength. The palace, too, had changed. Nobles who once sneered at humans now sought their counsel. Ambassadors from distant star systems looked to Earth as a rising power, a species capable of surprising the galaxy in ways previously unimagined. But Arya did not let this recognition go to her head. She knew that survival and influence were ongoing efforts, requiring vigilance, courage, and adaptability. She continued to train, to study, and to work alongside Lyra, refining strategies and preparing for future challenges. One evening, as the twin moons of the Helion system cast silver light across the palace gardens, Arya and Lyra walked together in quiet reflection. The alien flora shimmered softly, their colors reflecting in the pool of water at the garden's center. "You've come far, Arya," Lyra said softly. "When you arrived, you were cautious, wary, reluctant. Now you are respected, feared in some corners and admired in others. The humans have changed perception across the galaxy." Arya smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility mixed with satisfaction. It wasn't easy. "And it's not just me. Humans are capable, clever, and brave. We survive because we adapt, because we fight when necessary. And we have allies like you." Lyra regarded her for a long moment. "Indeed, you are more than I expected. I hoped for a capable human ambassador. What I found was an equal, someone I can trust, someone who challenges me and inspires me." Arya felt her heart beat faster. Recognition, trust, admiration. These were feelings she had rarely experienced, especially from someone like Lyra. And yet, they were real, genuine. "The palace has changed," Arya said, gazing at the moonlit gardens. "The galaxy, maybe it's ready to see humans differently. And we've shown that humans are not weak. We are clever, brave, and capable of shaping the future." Lyra nodded. "And together we can do more. Protect the peace, guide diplomacy, and perhaps show the galaxy that cooperation between species is not just possible, but necessary." Arya felt a thrill of possibility. The future was uncertain, but it was hers to shape. She had entered the Helion court reluctantly, expecting only to be a pawn. She had faced danger, intrigue, and prejudice, and emerged not only unbroken but stronger. The official ceremonies of the Helion Empire continued, but the focus had shifted. Humans were no longer outsiders or curiosities. Ambassadors from other species approached Arya for counsel, intrigued by Earth's approach to strategy, diplomacy, and adaptability. The galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries. Now it was beginning to understand. Lyra and Arya became symbols of cooperation across species, a partnership that demonstrated trust, intelligence, and courage could transcend differences. They trained together, studied together, and strategized for future challenges. And through it all, they respected each other, challenged each other, and supported each other. One day, as Arya looked out across the palace balcony at the swirling colors of the nebula, Lyra joined her. "Do you ever think about how far you've come?" Lyra asked. Arya smiled. "Every day. I came here reluctantly, expecting little. Now humans have a place in this empire, and I've found a friend and ally in you." Lyra's glowing eyes met hers, and for a long moment neither spoke. The wind rustled the alien leaves, and the stars beyond the palace glimmered. Finally, Lyra said, "Then perhaps the galaxy is ready for a new era. One where humans are not underestimated. One where cooperation, courage, and intelligence are valued. And one where trust can cross even the widest divides." Arya nodded, feeling hope, determination, and pride. She had survived, she had adapted, and she had thrived. Humans were underestimated no longer. Together, she and Lyra would face whatever came next. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of possibilities, and now Arya knew they were ready. For the first time, Arya truly felt at home among the stars. She had entered the Helion court reluctantly, unsure of her place. But now she had found purpose, respect, and friendship. She had proven that humans were capable, clever, and brave. And with Lyra at her side, the future, however uncertain, looked brighter than she could have imagined. The palace, the court, and the galaxy had all changed. And Arya smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning of a new era. For humans, for aliens, and for the partnership that had begun with a single, curious glance. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the balcony, full of unknown worlds, challenges, and adventures. And together, Arya and Lyra were ready to meet them.